It's great.
Yeah.
It's,
I would do every night, like doing that.
yeah, 5, 7 days.
That we should.
Look up to it, yeah.
Well. Facilities and
Lane, how you been doing?
I'm good.
we can make stuff.
It's been a long time. Have to. have everyone here, commission members, as well as members of the public who have come to join us today on behalf of Attorney General Cameron. I would like to thank all the commission members for the valuable precious time to the endeavor that we're undertaking here. And for those of you who are citizens, residents of this state, for being here and taking an interest in the work that this commission is about to perform over the coming months. We have a very packed agenda today. We're going to do our best to be efficient and thorough. And without further ado, after a call to order, we'll go ahead with the roll call. And we'll start off with Treasurer Ball or her designee.
Lauren Ferguson, proxy for Treasurer Ball.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferguson. Representative Danny Bentley sent his regrets due to a personal conflict. Assuming that he can hear us on the Zoom call, Mr. Vic Brown.
I am present. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't join in person.
That's all right. We're glad to see your face, though it be on that television screen, which, yeah, I think it took 15 pounds off of you rather than setting it on.
Thank you.
Ms. Karen Butcher.
Here.
Mr. Carlos Campbell. Here. Secretary Eric Friedlander.
Here.
Mr. Van Ingram.
Here.
Ms. Von Purdy.
Here.
Dr. Jason Roop. Present. And Dr. Sharon Walsh.
Here.
All right. Thank you all for being here, present in attendance and virtually in the situation of Mr. Brown. We want to make sure that we observe our regular business meeting schedule. Our next meeting will be October 4th, 2022 at 1 p.m., followed by another regular business meeting on November 15, 2022 at 1 p.m. And then the final formal business meeting of the year will be December 13, 2022 at 1 p.m. All three formal business meetings will be at the Capitol East Complex, which has the address of 1024 Capitol Center Drive, Suite 200, Frankfort, Kentucky, 40601. If the members would take a moment to look at the minutes prepared from the meeting of July 12, 2022, please take just about 2 minutes to review those for purposes of recollection and accuracy.
Looking for a motion for approval of the minutes?
We have a motion to approve the minutes as is and without revision. Is there a second?
Second.
Having been motioned and seconded, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes from the July 12, 2022 meeting are formally adopted and approved. I will do my best to keep my portion of the update on the agenda as brief as possible, but I want to make sure that we have full public disclosure of everything that we have been up to since the July 12 meeting. The very first thing that I'm pleased to announce is that in cooperation with our new staff members, Ms. Allison Chavies and Mr. Scott Hornbuckle, in addition to the staff of Office of Administrative Services, Ms. Stacy Woodrum, Ms. Jetta College, and Ms. Michelle Lacey, as well as our comms team headed by Ms. Krista Buckle with assistance from Mr. Trenton Armstrong. We have confirmed dates, times, and locations for 8 of the regional town hall meetings that will occur with this commission between September the 19th and November the 29th. For those who are watching this live streamed and for those who will watch the recording of it later, I want to make sure that I go through and list the specific dates, locations, and addresses of each of these sessions. We will kick off on September 19th in Pikeville, Kentucky at the Overlook, which has an address of 891 Bob Amos Drive, Pikeville, Kentucky, 41501. Let me back up and say that each of these will be held from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. local time, whether that is Eastern or Central. Our second will occur on September 27th in Ashland, Kentucky, at the train depot, which has an address of 99 15th Street, Ashland, Kentucky, 41101. The next one will occur in Hazard, Kentucky on October the 11th at the Forum, which has an address of 101 Bulldog Lane, Hazard, Kentucky, 41701. Our fourth one will occur on October the 18th in Covington, Kentucky, at the Kenton County Government Center, which has an address of 1840 Simon Kenton Way, Covington, Kentucky, 41011. The next one will be on October the 26th in Lexington, Kentucky, at the UK Student Center. Care and thanks to Dr. Walsh for this location, which has the address of 160 Avenue of Champions, Lexington, Kentucky, 40506. And thanks to Ms. Von Purdy, on November the 1st, we will be traveling to Louisville, Kentucky, where we will have our town hall there at Simmons College, which has an address of 1000 South 4th Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40203. On November the 9th, we will be traveling to Bowling Green, to Western Kentucky University, with an address of 2355 Nashville Road, Bowling Green, Kentucky, 42101. We will be using an academic hall there. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact room location for this, but by the October 5th meeting, that one will be repeated. We will have that detail along with the map for the commission members. And then finally, we will conclude in Paducah, Kentucky on November the 29th at the Paducah Convention Center, which has an address of 415 Park Street, Paducah, Kentucky, 42001. With the dates, times, and specific locations having been announced, do we have a motion to accept this schedule of town hall events from any member of the commission?
I'll make the motion.
Any seconds?
Yes.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimously passed, and thank you all for your time and cooperation. We recognize that this is a very compressed town hall schedule that takes us from one end of the state to the other. As many of you as can attend would be welcome to do so, but understood if you're not able to attend, but a handful as we get this thing moving from one end to the other. I want to refresh everybody's memory as to the timeline that we are trying to adhere to in terms of making sure that we get up, running, and ready to distribute grant money by January. Our first big timeline benchmark is October 15, 2022. That is the date by which we hope to have our online application ready to go. And by that, I mean an application for the grantees, an organizational disclosure form, as well as a set of frequently asked questions, which will hopefully address any ambiguities that might exist in the content up front. The primary purpose of the subcommittee meetings that we will be having today is to take a first look at what we consider to be a solid first working draft of the application, in addition to the organizational disclosure form. Once we break out into those subcommittee assignments, we'll discuss the process that we'll work through on the subcommittee level to make whatever necessary revisions are deemed appropriate to both of those documents so that we can make that October 15 timeline. Between October 15 and January 1, actually between October 15 and our last meeting of December 13, 2022, we will look to develop what will be the template of either the memorandum of agreement or the contract that we're going to put in place with grantees to make sure that the money is spent for the purposes it is intended to be spent, and that we have the appropriate level of transparency, accountability, and data collection on long-term results that come with the money. Finally, I guess it would have been toward the end of June, Blake Christopher, Chris Lewis, and I had the opportunity to appear before a joint budget subcommittee on human resources. And from the tone and tenor of the questions asked by the legislators, it was very clear that there was a significant amount of concern about the process by which monies distributed to the cities and counties would be tracked, accounted for, and assured for use for the intended purposes that it's being delivered for. And at that time, I advised them that this commission would look to exercise its collective expertise as well as its position in this process to work with the counties and cities to ensure that we have proper accountancy procedures in place to track the money, and that all of our local elected leadership understand that they have partners in us as we help them identify the best places that these resources can be spent for maximum impact in their particular localities. And so to that end, Mr. Hornbuckle, Ms. Chavies, and myself have had meetings with the leadership of both the Kentucky Association of Counties as well as the Kentucky League of Cities. We will be traveling to Owensboro to the Kentucky League of Cities Convention. I believe it will be on September the 22nd for the purposes of delivering a presentation to local city and municipality leadership as to what the state's addiction recovery infrastructure looks like, those things that we can point to as recommended best allocation practices for them. And we will look to replicate that process at the Kentucky Association of Counties annual convention, which I think is set for the 3rd week of November. They have been kind enough to entertain the possibility of having us address all elected gathered county leadership at the time of that convention. So we are very much making it a priority to keep our hand of cooperation in place with the counties and cities to ensure that allocations occur as they should, and that local elected leadership can stand up in front of their communities with pride as to how they have handled this money as it comes in. And so that is the end of my formal report. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I would want to let you know, Brian, that Dr. Marks and I will be doing a very similar presentation to what we did here at our first meeting at the Kentucky League of Cities, as well as CAECO. And League of Cities has comped us a booth, and so we'll be there for a couple of days to interact with any local officials that have questions.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments for me from the commission? Hearing none, we will get right into the heart of the agenda here as I see it. And at this point in time, I would like to welcome Executive Director Susan Clary, who is here from the Executive Branch Ethics Commission, which she oversees, to give us a presentation on conflicts of interest and what it is that we as the commission must do to ensure that we address those, as many of us sit on the boards of various organizations that are likely will be coming and applying for money from all of us. And so without further ado, Executive Director Clary, thank you very much for making the time to spend with us, putting this presentation together, and we'll be glad to hear from you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is such important work. It's good to be here in person today. I had to travel all the way across the parking lot. We are located across the parking lot, and encourage you, because I know many of you are officers in state government. Come see us, come write us, give us a call if you have questions. But it is good to be here in person. Coming from the court system for so long and juvenile justice, the work of this commission is so important. And like the director said, it's important that it be done well, and it's important that it be ethically done. So thank you so much for accepting this and for working on the project for us. I want to tell you a little bit about our Executive Branch Ethics Commission, and then specifically into the code and how it may impact you. I applaud the group because you are not one of the commissions that are specifically delineated as having to follow the code, but since there's such a huge amount of money involved and the process that you will be doing in allotting grants, I think the provisions of the code do apply here, and that's what we're going to be exploring a bit today. The Executive Branch Ethics Commission was begun in 1992, and it's an independent agency given the responsibility of administering the ethics code. We provide guidance. We can give you any kind of advisory opinion that you would choose to any officer or public servant. And then we also investigate and prosecute violations of the code. We do handle those investigations, and I've given you a sheet that kind of details the process for any of you that are in the agencies, how that works through for you. And I guess give me the first slide. Chapter 11A actually establishes our code of ethics. We're also in Title 9 of KAR. And then the last three governors have all entered executive orders regarding the Executive Branch Ethics Commission and its function. And in Executive Order 208 and 209, that was when the need was voiced to also include regulatory commission in certain provisions of the ethics code. You're not covered by all of it, post-employment provisions. There are a lot of other provisions that are in there, but you are covered by the conflict of interest part and also the gift part. So what does the commission do? Well, first, those of you that file statements of financial disclosure with us. Allison over there was our goddess of statement of financial disclosures, and still she was stolen for this commission from us. But those are processed, they're public records that are available for public review. And at the very end, I'm going to show you what a couple of them look like, because I think that maybe can answer any questions you might have, because that may be something you wish to do with this group. We do redact all the personal information if there is an open records request for that. Likewise, we handle filing registration for the lobbyists with the executive branch. That's very busy business right now in our office. For those of you that file the statements of disclosure, they're filed like your income tax statement on April 15th. Our timeout on filing the lobbyist is right now, and since we're having a special session, you can imagine that there are a lot of folks filing to be registered as lobbyists. We also train and educate. Any of you, we can come over and do a specific training for your agency and provide guidance. Anything from a phone call to me to a formal opinion from the commission. Oftentimes those are going to be people leaving state government or gifts. Gifts are also another area that we're interested in. Let me have the next slide. So what are we talking about? Executive Order 2008-454, it established standards for members of policymaking and regulatory boards and commissions. Those standards have been upheld the past three governors to ensure that you who serve the public sector are accountable to the people of the common. And the ethical standards that apply to boards and commissions are limited in the areas of conflict of interest and gifts. And we'll get to that. So what does that mean? I mean, you know, you're not going to use your influence in matters that are a conflict between your personal interest and the public interest. There's a 5%, if you have a 5% investment in a business, you know, you need to divulge that, or to try to use your influence for personal. And you want to go in and give me the next slide. To create privileges, exemptions, advantages, and more like that. It's also the appearance of impropriety. We recently had a commission member that asked for an opinion because while there was no direct conflict with his business interests, he did not have a dependent child. He had a child that worked for a law firm, and the law firm, much like you, was applying for some business in front of that commission. I sent him the forms that we're going to talk about in just a minute, but he decided to recuse. While there was no conflict, there could have been an appearance of conflict, and that can come back on your commission, especially with amounts of money with the law. So I think that one is just trying to avoid the look that would question a decision that could be made for this law. You want to give me the next one there? Okay. I have given you a sheet of paper. It's a memo from then Governor Stephen Bashir. And I like it as a way to explain what a conflict of interest is with a board such as this. You know, that we want to promote public confidence in the integrity of government. We don't want the commission integrity to be questioned, but it says right in there that members of state boards and commissions are put on state boards and commissions because they do have experience, because they've been in the public sector or the private sector and do have experience. You have contacts, people that you've been involved with. So it's almost to be expected that you will have some instances, and the proper procedure is set out in the document that you disclose in writing to the agency. A statement of disclosure is included there for you to take a look at, and that if you do have a conflict, you abstain from voting on that, and that is shown in the minutes. Simple as that. Judges recuse is a process very similar to that process that we've done for years. And that way, that's all that's required, to just put on the record that you have an interest that you need to divulge to the public. You want to give me the next one? So what do you look at to decide? It sounds nice to say, but what do you look at to decide if you really need to abstain? Has this private interest created a threat to the independence of your judgment? You'll have to decide that for yourself. Your participation adversely affect the public's confidence in the decisions that are made. Is your participation likely to significantly affect the disposition or not? Number 4, is there a need for your particular contribution? And then lastly, will the official decision affect you in a manner differently than the public? Everyone but number 4 takes the calculus and the scale one way. Number 4 also recognizes that you may have a skill set that this commission needs. In fact, Justice Scalia wrote an opinion about recusal at the Supreme Court that emphasized you've accepted this position. You know, you have a duty to vote on matters that are before you when you can. So that's also something that's taken in the balance, that if you do have special knowledge, you know, don't, just because you have one share of some kind of stock, automatically take yourself out of just, you need to consider all of these things together when making your decision and disclose. Okay. And then you have an agency ethics person in the Attorney General's office. Getting who it is, Alan. No, if it's big or no, it's Carmine. So you can speak with him, you can speak with us confidentially. So just make contact if you have questions about that. And I think that's general. Yeah, for those of us that are covered by the code, and I think in this situation as well, you're not going to divulge confidential information that you all have, if you have that, or take any kind of profit from the public funds that we just don't have. Yeah, this is the one about the 5%. If you have a greater interest in something than 5%, you will need to take yourself out of the action concerning that business. Okay. And there are exceptions to that, as there are. All right. So now the other area that you're bound by are the Gibson exceptions. And in the court system, we used to always call it the Poinsettia Rule, that you can't even accept a poinsettia during the holidays. See the judge back there laughing. It's very similar and it's very similar to conflicts, because you do not want to look as if whatever decision you're making has been bought on either side of it, whether you have a conflict or whether you're receiving a gift. What gifts are the payments, loans, money, advances, services, anything of value when you're getting more than what you're paying. What they're not, we can get that shit. Gifts to agencies pursuant to 45A of 97, that's Economic Development Cabinet. Family members that give you gifts. Campaign contributors, if you're running for office. Door prizes available to everyone, and a ticket to a UK basketball game if you pay face value for it. That's in their view, Allison. She's a UT man. It's actually any sporting events. Around Derby time, we get a lot of questions about Derby tickets. If you pay face value, even though there is no value for some of those, you are allowed to do that as an exception to the gifts rule. And then if you can in the next sheet. And of course, it's related to gifts from persons or businesses that do business with the state, regulated, but your ticket there is seeking grants from. So the tie with the gift has to be that it's someone that would be seeking grants from this commission, or they're lobbying or attempting to influence the action of this commission. You can return the gift, pay it the value of the gift, donate it to charity, or destroy it if it's perishable, and let these folks. Yeah. All right. And then lastly, just what those of you that are not likely enough to file financial disclosures, like many of us do, those are filed by officers and certain specified public servants. Not all employees in the executive branch have to file them concurrently, and those commissions that are set forth in the executive orders too. But it's something that I see you all will be considering. What it looks like, basically, just from the screenshot, you can see some general information, and then again, that 5% ownership interest thing that I made reference to earlier. Sources of income over a certain amount. These are redacted if anyone ever asks to look at them. So, you know, your personal information is kept confidential. And then you want to make just the last one as well. Quick, easy, and painless. We do applaud the work of this commission, and I thank you for having me, because while you're not specifically specified yet, if you all ever want to be, I'm certainly to work with you to have that done, but it's such a large amount of money and grants keeping that it seems to fall right within some of those rules. So hopefully this will be helpful to you, and thank you for inviting me.
Trying to entertain some questions.
Sure, if anybody's got.
Once the announcement of this commission is made, I believe I am likely not alone in having been approached by any number of individuals or organizations across the state who wish to share with us the things that they have in mind that they would like to propose for this commission to award by way of an grant. When we receive these inquiries, what is the best practice we should adhere to in order to avoid even the appearance of a conflict?
So as in they are attempting to lobby you already, is that how you're
Sure.
feeling? Yeah. Is that how you're feeling, that they're already approaching you on that? I think the best way is, like you're saying, get that application out there as fast as you can. Because you don't want to be put in a position where you know, all I can kick back to is over 30 years in the judiciary. You know, if you are lobbied, then when it comes time to make that decision, you know, you don't want to have to recuse yourself because you would have clicked off on, already have information, already have things that could be viewed as a conflict.
So let's cut it even thinner.
Okay.
Let's
can do that.
say that one of us gets an invitation to come and tour a sober living home or tour a treatment facility, and there's no discussion or even a disclosure by the inviting organization that they intend to apply. But lo and behold, once this application portal is cut on, all of a sudden, we see grant applications from folks who just, hey, come and take a look at the work that we're doing, because we want to make sure you are informed as a commission member as the activity that's going on out in the state. How do we deal with that?
I think you'd have to make some sort of a public disclosure, you know, on the record, just to protect yourself. Honestly, I would recommend that. I set up the juvenile code in the state when we went to diversion, and we were approached by a lot of facilities. We were offered lots of seminars, and I just took the stance that I couldn't go there because then I would be not looking at everyone that was, you know, available. So, you know, you have to be careful it's not a conflict. You ought to be able to go look at what's out there, but then it looks preferential.
So is there,
And we also don't have any disciplinary action against you, particularly if you look down the penalties, they're going to be aimed at public servants, you know, more than commission members, because you are, you know, public servants and private persons that are giving up their time to do this. You should not be held the same standard that I should be. And that disclosure list, it even says that one of the commission members would speak with you first, you know, to talk about it, and that then the commission could even consider it. A lot of these aren't really clear.
so in that latter scenario where we are invited to take a look at an organization or tour a space, but there's no discussion of a grant application or anything like that, does disclosure from a commission member that they have had contact with or have visited a particular organization cover them, or would they have to go all the way to a recusal even though a grant may not have been discussed in that meeting?
I think they might have to go. That's the question. Does it look like you're favoring someone? That's a discussion, you know, more appropriate for you to decide. Because if people are out there only going to certain mental health facilities or whatever, you know, that maybe you want to schedule field trips or do it as a group so that you don't. And that's why I mentioned number 4 back in the list of the calculus, because what can happen is you could have too many people, you know, feeling like they had a conflict if you start doing that. And that was the individual on the other commission, but Allison was still there when we were working through that with him. You know, it starts becoming, you know, are there enough other commission members to make the decision if we all start, you know, going off on our own?
And I don't want to take us into a morass because, as you said,
Yeah.
this is something that we need to figure out among ourselves. There is obviously a tension between making
Sure.
sure that we are educated and informed
Exactly.
by the citizens of the state, as opposed to being closed off and purposely blinded because we have been overly inflexible
True.
in terms of engagement. So it would seem as though the transparency associated with engagement is paramount, and it's showing that we do not in any way engage in grant-related discussions with any organization whatsoever until such time as it comes to consider one that is before us.
And if they were conducting, you know, just an on-site visit, I mean, maybe there would be some way that you could ask that the individual that would be doing that would not be their lobbyist. Or, you know, try to get some kind of I would get some kind of separation perhaps with that as well. So the person that would actually be making, the play for the funds might be a different individual than the person that just shows you on site.
But that can be difficult because many of the executive directors are the people who show you organization and the ones that help write those sorts of things themselves. So is it better to not take any of those sorts of meetings or make it clear up front that because you're taking them, it does not sway your decision when, or don't even go that far into it, but just say, when the application is available, we will let you know, or just not to take the meeting. Because requests are coming to,
And it's like you say, the informational part of it's very important.
I mean, if you ask me, I'm looking back at Blake because he works in and around our chief of staff, Mr. Carino. If it's me, I want us to be informed. I want us to be responsive to the folks in this state who are engaged in the work that we're paying attention to. At the same time, they've got to understand, if we're gonna come and visit you, we are not gonna talk about a grant. And if you have somebody there who wants to talk about a grant, they need to not be there. Because we're here to be informed about the nature of your work, not to do a preliminary scope out of whether or not we're gonna give you some money.
I think that's a helpful balance, speaking from the treasury perspective, and I feel like you were leaning on this as well. We just happen to visit locations, not because of this commission, but because we're visiting, and those conversations may happen without our control. So I think that's helpful to me, Brian, just to say, we can't discuss this, because I don't know that we can always have the foresight to know that they're gonna say that, like you're mentioning.
And you're gonna already know these people, that was what I was saying with kind of the memo. There's a recognition that when you've worked in these areas, people that are doing this work, and you can't not speak to them at a CAECO meeting or not speak to them, at a League of Cities meeting. But I do think the transparency is a big issue, like you're saying, and cutting it off before you get to anything financial. And then not accepting seminars like I had some folks do, because then you get into the gift, the gift end of it. You've got to watch that end too, when you are doing the visits, to make sure you're not.
When you're referencing seminar, you're talking about something that is in the vein of a formalized professional training for which someone might receive some sort of credit.
I'm talking about an old war story that we had certain groups that put on seminars, and basically we're trying to put juvenile officers and give them a nice weekend. So we had to stop that.
Agenda.
Yeah, agendas. Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Any other questions or
Yes.
comments? Yes, ma'am.
I would think that visiting anybody we were asked to visit shows impropriety on our part. And that they could come and tell us about their work they do, because I don't know everybody, and I know a lot of people, but I don't know where everybody does the work. Why can't they come to the listening session?
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I know they can, but I just think that for us to go out and visit somebody, that doesn't strike me as appropriate.
it was being informed is what Brian started talking about, because there are many agencies rule where I represent that I'm not as privy to all of them, but I would like to get as much information as possible. So where is that line?
Well, I don't know. I just don't know that constituting a visit is appropriate for us. I'm throwing it out there. I'm not saying I'm yay or nay.
I just want
It's a
to
discussion point. Sure, it was a great question.
Anything?
We went hard line, but we were the court, so we had to.
So I might be getting ahead of things, but when we're actually considering the applications, is there any circumstance under which the commission would want to do a site visit to a potential awardee?
I think that's on a case by case basis. If there's a particular application that we see come through that looks like we want to do that, there's no reason we can't do it. I don't see any reason why we.
I think I agree with you. I don't see a reason. So I've been approached, and I tell people that there's a schedule that's forthcoming, or that you can go to the website and look. But I don't think that there's a reason for me in this role to be invited to go see a place, to gather any information.
We're
I think
not
that,
having coffee with none of that. Those are things.
We've been doing this.
I don't know. I think it's a great
Just
discussion.
said what's publicly available. Basically, you can
Yeah.
look at all publicly available information.
right, because anything else would be
So we should
unfair.
just direct them to the website.
I think so,
That's-
because we want to evaluate the written applications on a level playing field.
I think it would be hard to be objective if I went to look at such and such, whatever program. And then I see their grant application come in. I'm gonna say, oh yeah, I remember that.
And that's when you
I don't-
recuse yourself. How could you do that?
Well, I'd rather just not visit.
It just depends on-
That's just my opinion.
Well, I can't unvisit. I've been everywhere.
Well, then we'll just come to you. We don't need to visit. We'll come to you.
Well, but I think that there's a difference there because I can't unvisit places. None of us can unvisit places.
Visit conversations we may have had. before.
So, but to be asked to visit because you are on this commission is the problem.
Yes.
There's, in my daily activities and tasks, like there's a lot of crossover in terms of like maybe treatment providers and so forth. So it would be nearly impossible to completely eliminate exposure or engagement. But I think Dr. Walsh is correct. For that purpose, that kind of is the hallmark to say, well, that's where we need to probably go a different path.
And which purpose is that?
For the commission, the grants that come through the commission for application process. If that's mentioned as the sole purpose of our gathering or a meeting or a tour, then that's, you know, as I understand it now, that's when I would categorize it as probably inappropriate.
Secretary Friedlander, you've done a lot of visiting.
I have indeed, but the difference in my mind, I stated it very well. Particularly if you have something on the street, right? You know, you're gonna put something on the street around these topics. That's when I get really, I lock up, right? We have RFPs all the time that are going out. Anybody that might bid on that RFP, no. So, but, you know, if there's not something out there, then I'm, you know, I mean, with everybody, but it's when you've got something that's going out on the street for money. That's when you have to back up. At least that's how I define it. I hope that's a good definition.
So that.
So once the guidelines are out there. no,
Post the application is online on the 15th of October.
Yeah.
Is that how you would define putting it on the
That's
street?
well, and once we start to get down to the nitty gritty of working on it, so I'm assuming that's from this committee meeting on, right? When we're getting ready, you know, what's gonna go on the street. That's when I stop. Once you really start doing the work, and we would all start doing the work on whatever that's gonna go out on the street, I'm to stop. Right? That's kind of that's where I make my break.
Any other questions?
So as a non-voting member and representing the commission as well, I understand that I'd be under the same guidelines. With my congressional duties, as a congressman, we're looking at a bigger scope, so
I think
guidance on that would be very much appreciated.
I'm gonna let Director Cleary veto me if I say anything wrong, but you have a job to do.
Correct.
Your job means engaging the people in your district, which includes a lot of people who are involved in substance dependence issues.
Correct.
You got to be able to continue to do that.
Correct.
Insofar as you're a non-voting member, that already cures part of the problem because you ain't voting. However, when they come before us, insofar as you wish to participate in discussion, a disclosure of those who you have been around, know, and have had contact with would be an absolute necessity. Fair enough.
Right, and I think part of what all of you are saying is it relates to this, the contact has to be where you are not giving the idea that you can't do something for them as well. This casual contact that you talk about, that's not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about giving the appearance that this contact is going to impact this commission.
And I have had a mixture of contacts. Some have been very blatant. And when I say blatant, I mean, we want some money and we gotta show you what we're gonna do to get that money. Those individuals get sent elsewhere. There are other folks who say, we want to show, this commission is fabulous. We want to show you the sorts of things that are out here. And we want to show you what we're doing on our end to address this problem. We're not asking you for anything. We just want to educate you.
Right.
And in those situations, I have a hard time saying no, because I need to be educated. And those of us around this table may wish to be educated about a part of this problem that we've not had exposure to. So trying to navigate that fine line gets sticky.
Well, I meet with a lot of people in a week's time, and this comes up almost every meeting. And I just direct them to the website and direct them to the forums, and that's the appropriate time to talk about it. And here's where we're gonna be and all that kind of stuff, and just leave it at that.
All right. So from this point forward, you don't have to make this as a motion, but just as an effective agreement. That insofar as any of us receive contacts from organizations or individuals who are in the universe of substance use disorder, that we direct them to website and we direct them to these public forums insofar as they wish to have any public discussion between now and the beginning of January, when the first round of awards go out. Is that agreeable to everybody?
Yeah.
All right. We got it on video for time immemorial. So refresh your mind. Now, this brings us to our next item. And again, Director Cleary, thank you very much for taking the time to come visit with us and give us this presentation. Are there any other questions or comments for her before we move to the next item? Several of us around this table have already completed as part of our job responsibilities, the statement of financial disclosure with the Executive Branch Ethics Commission that lets any citizen go on and look up to see what we might have involvement with that could potentially even give the appearance of conflict in our official duties. And with the importance of this commission's work in front of our mind, it is recommended that we ourselves as commission members fill out this statement of financial disclosure, file it with the Executive Branch Ethics Commission so that it is on hand and apply this disclosure process to ourselves. Any questions or comments about that? Hearing none, is there a motion to apply the disclosure, the Executive Branch disclosure form to this commission as mandatory exercise for its members? Seconded?
Yes.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And we will ask, see, we're sitting here on the 29th of August. We will ask commission members have their statements of financial disclosure completed 30 days from today. And as far as there are any questions about how to complete this process, I would direct you to Ms. Chavies or to Mr. Hornbuckle, and they can assist both, can assist anyone directly who requires assistance. And now we will move on to the portion of the agenda that discusses commission members and staff communication system overview. Because we are all working in different places, we wanted to make sure that we have a communication infrastructure in place for the commission members to communicate with each other, for the subcommittees to carry out their work, and to have a process in place that makes it easy for everybody to reach out and touch each other on an as-needed basis. I mean that in a metaphorical sense. Mr. Hornbuckle, would you mind to come and discuss with the commission what you have developed? And be sure to treat me as the guinea pig of ignorance when it comes to all things related to technology and how you go about doing this.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Start with the PowerPoint. Right, next. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Oh, you're fine. Perfect. All right, so the primary objective in building this out is really to make sure that we can collaborate, making sure that people know how to use the tools, can access the files they need, email, etc. We move on to the next slide. There's a couple considerations to note. that we have to deal with whenever we're working with collaboration. One is the open records request. So because we have open records request, and because this commission is working with a great deal of money, we want to make sure that we are in line with that and that we are working to make sure that those are, that all of that lines up, that we don't have a tendency to have work emails on personal servers, because that could potentially open you up to where your personal items become things that are linked to as well. So with that, what we've done is we've created state email addresses for all of the commission members. Now, in some cases, you guys have already have state email addresses. In that instance, you will use the ones that you already have. For the majority of you, you have new state email addresses. So what we'll need to do after we wrap this meeting, we'll need to do just a little technical setup, get your passwords in order, and we'll do all that at the close of this. But once we have that email address set up, that will allow us to do everything else that we're talking to. So physical distance is going to be one of the things that we want to overcome, so that we don't have to wait while we're not in the same room. So this will help us with that. And then we all have different levels of technical capability. Some are a little better with computers than others. So the idea is to make this absolutely as easy as possible, because the simple matter is, if it's not easy, it's not going to get used. So the main the tool set that we have has lots of capabilities, but the main things that we're really going to be focusing on is email and communication, document sharing, and file collaboration. A lot of these documents that we're working with are quite sizable, so getting it through email may not be the best way. So we work to overcome that and do so in a manner that's very easy. So we move forward. All right, so a couple different ways to access the tool sets that we have. So it's going to be within a Microsoft Office suite. So you already have a lot of these applications probably on the work computer that you have, Microsoft Word, Outlook, things of that nature, right? So that'll already tie right in with the existing logins that you'll have. You'll be able to add those in and everything will work smoothly. But some cases, for instance, I had to do an update on an agenda item over the weekend. I was sitting there at my mother's house, didn't have my laptop on me. How are we going to get this done? Well, we've made ways to make this work. And in a perfect test case, we were able to access this using the web, bring not exactly 100% of the same functionality, but I'd say about 95% allow me to make that. So we'll go ahead and show a demo of what that looks like today. We'll go ahead and move on. All right, perfect. So we'll just switch over to the website. All right, perfect. I'll go ahead and take over the mouse here.
Hold on one second.
Oh.
I gotta share it for Zoom.
Sure.
All right, okay.
Perfect. So once you log in, this is essentially what you will see. So you'll see the Kentucky Office of Attorney General, Opiate Abatement Advisory Commission teams, and then you'll have a couple of different teams that will be listed down here on the left. Whether this is on the login version through a web browser or through the desktop or mobile application. In this case, we're just going to use the demo, but everyone will have access to the general. That's where it's going to be the general file sharing. And then for the subcommittee that you're a part of, that will show up within your individual window. So for now, we'll do the demo. The main thing that with each of these, we will have posts. So welcome to the Teams demo, all commission members. This is an area where you can go. It's essentially a communication where you can talk to all the members within a subcommittee. If you have a topic or a document that you're working on, trying to get ready, this is just a central place where you can chat very quickly, a little bit easier and faster than email. But the primary thing that we'll use here is our file structure. So from here, you'll see I've got a Word document as well as an Excel spreadsheet. You can open these documents right here within these, and they'll open natively within the application. So for instance, I'll go ahead and open up the spreadsheet. And our Wi-Fi is a little slow here, so bear with me for just a moment. So for instance, we've got a spreadsheet here, and we've got the different Excel things within the file, but let's say we're doing something where we need something a little bit, a functionality that's not available within the web portion. You can actually hit this right here, open in the desktop app, which will open this directly in your desktop version of Excel, give you the full functionality, and it'll automatically be set to autosave. Make your changes, close it, and they will automatically go here And one of the really nice things about this functionality that Allison and I have been working on over the last couple weeks is the ability to collaborate. So especially in this, with this application that we're going to be doing for the grants, there may be an opportunity where different subcommittee members, one person's working on one section, another person's working on another section. We've all seen things where you have version control issues, who's working on which version, how do we get all these changes to one document? We want this easy. We want to eliminate all that nonsense. So essentially what we can do is open up this document, both people can work on it simultaneously, hit save, and all of the changes will be kept from there. So from here, things like if you want to create a new folder, that can be there. If you want to upload a document, it's a simple matter of dragging it and dropping it from your either from your computer or from your phone. All right, we go back to the presentation. Go ahead to the next slide. Perfect. So this is a view of the desktop version. So very similar to what we were just looking at. The main difference in the thing that I want to point out is this icon right here where it says Office 365 Learning. There we have pre-recorded videos for how do I use Teams? How do I use Microsoft Word? How do I upload a document? Things of that nature. A lot of that is available to you already. So if you have any additional questions, or if you don't want to spend the time watching a video, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be at your disposal. On the next slide. Any questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to working with each.
I just got one quick.
Yes, sir.
That the silence of confusion or clarity.
Clear.
Clear? Excellent.
I'm confused, but I've got you right on hand, so you can help me out.
Absolutely. And I'm on hand for any of you. So as we go forward, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Scott, for the work that you and Allison have both done to get this together for us. And before we break out into the subcommittees or sometime shortly thereafter, depending on how long they go, those of you who have newly assigned state email addresses, Scott will work with you when it comes to logging on and making sure that you have system access and are ready to rock and roll on official communication. That brings us to the section of the meeting that is devoted to public comments, any remarks that folks may wish to make. And Allison had just brought me a list of folks who have signed up on the sign-up sheet, and I've got the time where I buried it. We have two individuals here who wish to speak. If those who have signed up wish to stand so that I can see you. The table is evening. We have two people. Yes, ma'am. You want to start off?
Sure.
If you don't mind, please introduce yourself and the organization you affiliate with.
My name is Marlene Taylor. I'm here representing Lake Cumberland Community Action Agency. I serve as the project director for AROC, which stands for Area Response to Opioids in Rural Communities Consortium. We are a consortium made up of 4 community agencies. Lake Cumberland Community Action is the lead, the Adultery Group, Lake Cumberland District Health Department, and the Lake Cumberland Area Development District are all our core members. And we also have about 50+ community members on our consortium. And then I forgot to say thank you. I wanted to first thank you all so much for your time, your efforts on this committee, and doing your invaluable work, and just talk a little bit about payroll. We received the planning grant and the implementation grant, the R4 HRSA planning and implementation grant. So that's how we developed our consortium. We did a huge community needs assessment. So for the Lake Cumberland area, the things that our needs assessment showed was a great need was stigma reduction and recovery housing. So we're very pleased to announce that we'll be opening up recovery housing due to a generous donation from one of our physicians in one of our local counties donated us her old facility so that we could turn that into recovery housing facility. And of course, stigma is a huge barrier in our 10-county area. So we have partnered with Shatterproof and CORE. We have billboards in 3 of our counties to just highlight, what stigma is, to provide education to the citizens of our communities. So, we just wanted to highlight that work, and I just wanted to thank you again for your time and just providing a little bit about what's going on in the beautiful Lake Kernville region and the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Ms. Emily Henderson.
Hello, I'm Emily Henderson, Project Manager with the Kentucky Statewide Opioid Stewardship Program with the Kentucky Hospital Association. So I'm here today as a continuation of last commission meeting, Dr. Katie Mark's comments about the program. And so I wanted to give a little history. The Kentucky Hospital Association launched in 2018 in conjunction with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, the comprehensive statewide opioid stewardship program. We commonly refer to it as Kentucky SOS. It is also core funded. And initially, the program had an inpatient prevention focus for reducing opioid overprescribing while improving safe opioid use. Many attributes to the program, but I'll highlight one in which we provide and encourage education to providers about using alternatives to opioids in the emergency department. That is, not using opioids, using other pain treatments, whether it's acetaminophen, anti-inflammatories, things like that to help treat pain for common emergency department presentations other than opioids. So the cabinet approached the hospital association to say, hey, let's expand your bandwidth to primary care clinics, hospital owned. So currently the program, the Kentucky SOS program is currently implementing a team-based evidence approach for best practices for treating long-term opioid patients or chronic pain patients in the primary care clinics across the state. So this is essentially a clinic redesign. And again, we work with primary care clinics to update their policies, procedures, workflows so that patients are consistently and effectively treated for their pain when they come to the primary care clinics, also encouraging alternatives to opioids. And again, as a primary focus, like our inpatient work, which continues, is to reduce opioid overprescribing while improving safe opioid use. Both arms of the Kentucky SOS program also encourage and educate providers that if a patient presents and is opioid naive, which means they are not currently on opioids or have not taken them in the past for an extended period of time, to keep them naive, find other treatment modalities, whether that's physical therapy or acetaminophen, ibuprofen, things like that, that can treat their pain. Studies have shown that actually other forms, other medications like acetaminophen and ibuprofen are actually more beneficial for pain control than opioids. So that education continues with providers across the state. Fast forward, and I'm delighted to report that the Kentucky SOS program is continuing to expand, and we're delighted to announce that we are expanding to the emergency departments and doing a bridge program. We currently have 10 ED or emergency department bridge programs in the state. The Hospital Association and the Kentucky SOS program wish to have one in every emergency department and acute care in the state. That's our wishes. The bridge program is essentially, it's a connection or a link when a patient with substance use disorder presents to the emergency department, that once they are treated for their overdose, obviously given reversals and treated medically and they are stable, that they receive counseling and education about treatments in and around their area to start their road to recovery. And so this is an immediate treatment, immediate counseling. And that is the wish of the Kentucky SOS program, is that not only that we're looking to reduce opioid overprescribing and safe opioid use, keeping patients naive, but also ones that are suffering from substance use disorder to help them begin the road to recovery. So one important, and studies have found that peer support specialists or bridge navigators, they've been called multiple things, but these are people that are currently in long-term recovery, and they have walked in these patients' shoes. They know what's happening medically, physically, and emotionally to them. And they are there in the emergency departments to counsel and to help these patients and say, this is what's going to happen. This does work. It is available, and we have help here to help you. And essentially, the Kentucky SOS program wishes to educate providers on medications for opioid use disorder, obviously help provide our emergency departments with resources and toolkits to get them immediately into treatment. That could be help with transportation, housing, whatever the case may be that these patients need to begin their road to recovery. So thank you so much for your time. We have a lot going on with the Kentucky SOS, or Kentucky Statewide Opioid Stewardship Program, through the Kentucky Hospital Association, but I am excited to be a conduit to highlight the wonderful efforts that our hospitals and their primary care clinics are providing to our patient. We've done a lot of work, but we have a lot more to go. And so we keep growing, and that's wonderful. And so we're accepting the challenge, and thank you. Do you have any questions or anything? Or
I have a question, but I'll ask you individually when the meeting's.
terrific. Okay.
I just have a little statement. Not only is that a great program and really quite successful, we've also kind of doubled down on it within the cabinet with our hospital reinsurance program, reimbursement program, where we have identified several substance use measures that will help hospitals continue to receive a high reimbursement rate. So we're the hospital association, thank you, has been great to work with. And clearly have demonstrated your all's commitment to substance use prevention. I want to say I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Is there anyone who did not sign up for a speaking slot who would like to speak now?
Brian, before we move on, I want to bring up one thing just for the knowledge of this subcommittee. And it's an anecdote. That's really all it is. The Cabinet for Health and Family Services had a booth at the State Fair, which was a lot of fun, but one thing that was quite serious. We were giving out naloxone at the State Fair. We made people take like an 8-minute video, watch an 8-minute video, and then we would give a dose. We gave out over 1,000. The demand was high, and I think it speaks to the demand that's out there for these products. We did not do fentanyl strips, and that's a whole other discussion. But I do want to mark for you all that that was a constant line at the fair. It was a constant line at the booth. Folks from all walks of life, right? Who were coming and receiving that, taking the. We're gonna, probably expand it next time, figure out how we do it better, right? Learn each time. But really, over that course of the State Fair, we gave out over 1,000 doses. So I wanted to mark that for folks. I didn't know when the appropriate time was to at least give that anecdote. But thanks for giving me the chance to do that.
Well, we don't have to be so rigid and difficult. We don't make good information come out at the appropriate time. And thank you very much for sharing that. Without getting into a philosophical discussion within the context of a formal business meeting, it's not until you hear about those realities that folks can begin to understand the sheer magnitude of a problem that exists most of the time in silent suffering in this state, and it is huge. It is huge, and thank you for giving us that information.
Could I just add one comment to that?
Absolutely.
And I might be getting ahead because I couldn't help but browse the draft application and thinking about how our committees are divided, because we have 3 committees, subcommittees for review. And one of them is prevention. And I think when the general public thinks about prevention, they think about primary prevention, which would be the hospital association stewardship activity. But then you can go down the path of prevention to something like tertiary prevention, like naloxone, which prevents someone from dying. That is prevention, but it's a very different type of prevention and often gets lumped into harm reduction. And harm reduction can be also kind of a loaded term depending on what audience you're with. So I think that one of the things is that we need to think about where those other types of activities that are really reaching the people who are at highest risk fall within the structure of our review process with the current configuration.
Again, thinking out loud, as we get ready to prepare to break out into these subcommittees, just for purposes of everybody hearing, and the subcommittee meetings themselves are going to be live streamed. So everything that we do here is always going to be above board, publicly transparent, viewable, and accessible at all times. Recognizing that there are ears which are unfamiliar with concepts related to harm reduction, something that I am trying to do a very fast navigation on in terms of educating my own self. Insofar as we are able to develop concrete clinical rationales that are empirically supported for the delivery of harm reduction services, it would seem as though placing harm reduction as a demarcated line within treatment makes the best sense for the uninitiated viewers. That's just me.
I would agree with that. I think that that sounds like a great idea. And, you know, the level of evidence for different approaches that people are trying in the midst of this crisis varies. Naloxone's one, it clearly works. And it's easy to disseminate. There are others that are, they're emerging scientific literature on. There are some that actually are currently against the wall in the state. And so we'll also have to be thoughtful about that.
And let me make sure that I encourage, even though we have assigned subcommittees for purposes of breaking up labor and for purposes of making sure that we have different angles and perspectives brought to the same set of facts, or in this circumstances, applications and forms, subcommittees should absolutely cross-pollinate. And insofar as you have knowledge and expertise of legal, regulatory, or policy barriers that prevent us from addressing this as it needs to be addressed, we have a subcommittee that is devoted to what we are calling, reform and compliance.
Right.
And we need to be casting as big of a net as possible on our legislative wish list, because the General Assembly is going to be in session before we know it. And we do not want to miss out on this session.
Right.
So anything and everything that can be developed in that regard needs to be put in that pipeline. Before we dismiss into the subcommittee breakouts, we have one matter of logistical clarity that needs to be cleaned up on that front. And that is I'm going to entertain a motion to move Dr. Roop from the Reform and Compliance Committee to the Treatment and Recovery Committee. Insofar as Dr. Roop represents the community, that's a request that we wish to honor. Is there a motion from someone who is not Dr. Roop? That we do that?
I moved that we moved Dr. Root to that aforementioned committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimously adopted, and Dr. Roop, you will be reassigned to the Treatment and Recovery Committee. Now, I'm going to read off where these things are going to be. And Mr. Hornbuckle and Ms. Chavies can show you to individual rooms so that we can get business in order as quickly as possible in each of the subcommittees. Documents that you're going to be taking with you include the draft application, the draft organizational disclosure form, just for clarity purposes, we have run off another copy of the proposed regulations that have the nomenclature changes that you so helpfully sent us.
Thank you.
And we want to make sure that you have these in hand, to look at and to consider. Our meeting of October the 4th, 2022 will have 3 action items for sure. They will be the adoption of the application, the adoption of the organizational disclosure form, and the adoption of our regulations. So the subcommittee, the first round of subcommittee work will be directed toward reviewing and proposing revisions to each of these things with a timeline of redistribution and then final consideration leading up to that October 4th meeting. And so without any further ado, to get this kicked off, we'll go ahead and dismiss the commission as a whole into their subcommittees. If you need a refresher on which one you are assigned to, I'll be happy to read it to you. For treatment and recovery, which is going to be in conference room C, is Ms. Karen Butcher, Dr. Sharon Walsh, Mr. Van Ingram, and Dr. Jason Roop. Our prevention subcommittee, which will be meeting in room 157 across the hall, my regrets on the accommodation, by the way, in advance, is Secretary Friedlander, Ms. Von Purdy, Mr. Carlos Cameron. And then finally, on the Reform and Compliance Committee, which is conference room D, that is going to be Mr. Big Brown, who will be participating virtually. Treasurer Ball's designee, Lauren, please forgive me for your last name.
Ferguson, no worries. no
Ms.
worries.
Ferguson. And then Representative Bentley, who is not in attendance today, but I will be coming and visiting. I think we've got enough for a forum to justify that committee going ahead and rolling today. So without any further ado, the commission is dismissed, and we will look to reconvene in here at 3:15 for the formal motion to get back to regular business.
May I ask you a question, Marlene?
All right. Do we have a motion to reconvene for our regularly scheduled business meeting? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
All right, that's unanimous. Before we get into the final portions of the agenda, we just had our subcommittee breakouts. Let me ask by individual subcommittee, treatment and recovery, do you have a chair?
We do. Yes, we
Who
do.
is that?
Dr. Sharon Long.
Right, Dr. Walsh. Do you have a report out of your folks here this afternoon of any kind?
If you would like us to go through the application material, we can do that here, or if you'd like us to make recommendations in writing afterwards, I'm happy to do that as well.
Let's do the latter. Unless you so wish to do the former, in which case that's fine.
No, I'm happy to do the latter.
All right. The prevention committee, do we have a chair? And who? That is you.
And we have made our recommendations, to the application we made known to.
Okay. Dr. Walsh, is your committee's recommendations, are they comprehensive or do y'all need some more time with the actual document to continue to generate more?
I think that they're comprehensive. We got through the whole thing, but I would like to make certain that they are comprehensible
Gotcha.
when I share them with you.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Reform and compliance, I understand that we had a chair appointed in absentia.
We did. And we gave all of our suggestions to Scott. He has been in.
All right, very good. As we work our way through this, in particular, when it comes to the legislative wish list for reform and compliance, everybody who is here assembled in this room has a very extensive and diverse network. And insofar as we cannot necessarily be responding to solicitations from outside groups and organizations to come visit and tour, I would certainly encourage everybody to reach out to your individual networks, to ask them what it is they think we need to be recommending to the legislature for our legislative, regulatory, and policy wish list. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I think that this commission certainly carries a tremendous amount of credibility by virtue of its constituent individuals who are represented here when it comes to being able to have an authoritative voice as to the changes that we need to achieve to our legal framework here to help us do this. It is a co-equal top priority with every other one that we have, which ties into these town hall events. We will be having the completion of what is basically an electronic invitation that we as the office will be sending out to all the local officialdom in the host counties as well as those that surround it. Once this invitation is complete, we'll make sure that you receive it individually and spread it far and wide. Trying to pack the house for these is a top priority. Again, this being a once in a lifetime problem, but a once in a lifetime solution. Everybody who wants to say something, we hope to be able to have them and give them that opportunity. That means disseminating the information far and wide. Does anybody here have any other updates or announcements that they would like to make before we move toward adjournment?
Will we, one question,
Yes, ma'am.
will we do any RSVP on town hall just to assess the number of people and the capacity? Or we will just,
We're going to just open it wide and once folks show, they show. Now, I think that all of the venues, and correct me if I'm wrong, for those who have knowledge. I think that all of the venues have capacity of anywhere from 1 to 200 people, and in some cases, maybe a little greater than that. I hope that we don't have to be worried about filling those places up. I see Dr. Brinsley is shaking his head. And I don't want to speak for anybody who is sitting here at the table, but when I think about who I hope that we will hear from, I hope that we will hear from folks who are in, if they are not in recovery, they are working their way toward recovery. They are family members of folks who are impacted by this situation, whether they be living or whether they have passed. Those are the folks who get to stand to the front of the microphone in my book. And if y'all are comfortable with that, that's how we will kick these things off once we show up. Absolutely. Is any, yes, ma'am.
You know, I've talked to you at length about the recovery ready communities. Is that something that we could have a presentation in our October meeting about recovery ready communities?
Sure.
I have a question that goes back to something that you said earlier when you talked about the importance of this commission potentially in helping the local governments with the understanding how to best use the money that they'll receive, which is half of all of the money, I believe. And I think that what you said was that there would be some advisement about best practices. I'm wondering what those are and where that's going to come from.
It's gonna come from our collective discussion as to what those need to be.
Okay.
What I have asked both Mr. Hornbuckle and Ms. Chavis to do is pull upon information that we have received from the Office of Drug Control Policy, as well as information related to recovery ready communities to basically map out what the state's formal substance use recovery infrastructure is. What is in each community? What is in each county? What is it that is already resourced? What needs to be resourced? What are your options as a county judge executive or as a mayor as to where this money needs to go? Any feedback that any commission member wants to provide to us as to what needs to be included in this map, and there will be a series of them. By all means, send it to us so that we can make sure that no bit of information is left on the table for presentation.
We will have the first draft, and emphasize the word first draft, of the recovery ready community outline on September the 28th. When our full recovery ready advisory council comes together. Now, I suspect that will change and reshape as time goes on. I don't think we're gonna get perfect the first draft, but that'll be a good document for county judges and mayors to look at and say, okay, what, these are the things that the recovery ready communities have. We don't have but 3 of these. We need these other 2. We don't have, we don't provide any transportation. We don't help anybody with transportation. So maybe that's something we need to work. And our hope is, and what we keep talking when we talk to community leaders is, we hope that you use these 2 opportunities together.
Absolutely.
Recovery ready communities and this grant funding.
Yes.
Come together.
Yes.
Fill in the gap, what you do a needs assessment and then provide what you don't have.
And will KCO and KLC also get presentations on recovery ready communities?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. When it's shaped up and ready to go. And we're putting together a plan where we'll do a lot of on-site stuff.
So when that's shaped up and ready to go, is that prior to the annual conference?
It's not going to make this year's conference.
If there is something that could be shared, just in terms of the general framework in as much detail as y'all can deliver to us leading into that Kentucky League of Cities meeting, I'd love to have it, just so we can speak to it in some way that is somewhat informative. Is there something that you would like for us to include from your vantage point in what we present? Because if so, we're happy to work it in.
There are so many things. So I would be happy to read whatever gets put together and to look at the material that Vanna's gathering on the recovery ready communities.
I think what none of us wants is to hear about, tens of thousands of dollars going down to Cousin Bob's office supply store with opioid.
Right.
There are a lot of things I don't want to see it used for.
I'm sure we can make us a pretty big list. But I think taking advantage of 2 things. Number one is the expertise that we have here as the commission to be able to say, as the repository of collective professional and institutional information, these are your best bets. Coupled with, as the folks who are overseeing the terms of these settlements, we sure don't want for there to be a manufacturer to come back and lodge a judgment against you because you didn't use this money right. So we want you to make sure they don't have it. Any other questions, comments, observations? All right. Well, hearing none, this was a very productive and much more than what I thought abbreviated meeting this afternoon. And I want to thank y'all for the time and for defining my expectations, because when we generated this application draft, I was very fearful that we would come away with additional add-ons rather than substantial subtraction. That sounded the way it worked out that way. So I very much appreciate y'all. Without anything further, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Next formal meeting.
October 4th.
October.
This is Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you.